Hello and welcome to our session about the AI session we never knew we needed. And looking at this room, I think we now all know that we need this session because otherwise you wouldn't be here. So we will quickly introduce ourselves. So hi, my name is Luise. I'm an M365 and Power Platform consultant based in Germany, which basically means I build a lot of stuff in a lot of clouds. I'm an awarded MVP in 2 categories for M365 development and business applications. I love all things communities, stickers. I love the number 42. Who else? 42? Where are my nerds? Thank you. You're my people. If you like to, please do follow me on Twitter. It's just my name. It's @LuiseFreese. If you would like to read my blog, it's at m365princess.com. If you can't see my tiara, you're all muggles.
And I'm Iona. Nice to meet you all. Iona, I'm from the Netherlands, so you guys probably know where that is, across the pond. I'm also Microsoft MVP, MCT, doing a lot with biz apps. But before that, I actually was a physicist and also did something from data science. And besides that, I like metal, Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons, you name it, electronics, IoT, blowing stuff up. Sign me up for that anyway. So that's about me.
Okay.
The reason you're here, AI ethics, well, good questions. We have a lot of biases, a lot of problems, and, well, AI is not really going to solve it for us. So we are going to do that. At least that's what we should be doing as humans, right?
Exactly.
Always an interesting one. How can we solve that? Well, taking a look at the human bias, it's only a small portion of the problem. We also have the systemic biases that we introduce during the way that we approach projects with AI. And also the statistical and computational biases, as you can see. And that's not even everything. There's way more that we can use. So where do we start?
Well, do you know who that is? Who is that? Good-looking guy? Yeah, kind of. So this is Cristiano Ronaldo. Why do you think we put him on a slide? Yes, that as well. So we're very supportive, that as well. But what else? So he seems to be pretty much successful in what he's doing, right? But do you know who that is?
Not everyone at once?
Yeah.
Someone?
Maybe someone in the back?
You can shout whatever you want. It's your moment.
This is your moment to be the smart one in the room. Okay, so this is Christine Sinclair. Why are we introducing you to these 2 people? So it turns out, if you ask a search engine, or ChatGPT, or any other large language model, who scored the most goals in international soccer games, the answer is Cristiano Ronaldo. The problem with that is that this is not correct, because Christine Sinclair scored way more goals in international soccer game, but it's just like our usual bias that, well, I mean, she's a woman, doesn't really count, right? So we will just ignore that. And I did not ask for a hey in men's games. I was just asking for international games. Which means I will introduce you to the lack of factuality and to the bias that is just systemic in all of our content. And as we say, shit in, shit out, and we feed large language models with biased data, we will return biased data. And we can't do anything about that. And the problem with that is that we as humans believe that if we ask a machine about something, that it would return the truth. And that is just hey, do you believe in the fairy, the tooth fairy?
No.
Yeah, but it's kind of like that, right?
It is.
It's so believing in Santa, for that matter. So that's the regular bias that we have as humans, and this is reflected in our data. And this data is needed and is used to feed large language models and even other AIs, for that matter.
Here you can see an example. Simple question to Dall-E. Most of you people know it. You can ask something and it will generate some art for you. And in this one, I said, hey, Dall-E, draw me a poor couple. And you can see whatever it created. I wouldn't say people, but you can see whatever it spit out. But if you take a quick look at it, it's black people, it's colored people, it's at least not...
It's not white people. And if you ask it, hey, draw me a rich couple, what do you see?
It's that stereotypical American occupation, right?
It is a heteronormative couple. And there's just like no diversity. So even if you prompt it just like again and again and again and again, at some point you feel like, just like by coincidence, there should be a queer couple. Something like that. There isn't. And if you look around yourself, you will find queer people in your life. But that is not reflected in the output of those large language models. And this is just Dall-E, and there's just like a lot of more examples. We will not bore you with that, just like as an eye-opener. Oh, that's a fun one.
Face recognition, something we probably all have been using on our phones. Unlock your iPhone with it, maybe use Android with it, quickly make a payment. Also on airports, stand in line, computer scans you, and you can walk past through it.
You do not even need to provide your passport anymore because you have a face.
It's really cool, right? Is there a bias in there? Well, actually, they did some studies, and that's on our next slide. And here you can see the differences between white and black male and females. And you can see that there's quite a difference on what they're actually detecting. And you can say to yourself, okay, how am I going to explain this? And well, the most obvious reason is lack of data. Because if there are more white people in a system than black people, white people will get recognized better than those black people. So is the question of, is the system lacking? Or is it just the ignorance that we have, like, okay, well, there are more white people that we're going to scan, so focus on that, and we don't care about the rest?
I mean, as if black people were an edge case. They are not. Or as if just like being a woman would be an edge case. I mean, at a tech conference, maybe. I mean, the advantage of that is the queues in front of the ladies' restrooms are just like non-existent. Let me tell you like that. But other than that, I'm just like pretty disappointed because the bias that we have, they're even intersectional, which means if I'm not only a woman, but also have just like a darker skin, then I'm just like double screwed. So I don't like that. But still, this is the world that we live in, that we ignore data, that we do not care enough to just like display the full spectrum. And this leads to just like a super narrow view. And that, again, that leads to an output that is very biased, has very certain angle, and that does not benefit a lot of people. So we would love to take you on a little journey. And we call this the 5 stages of grief. So who of you is familiar with the 5 stages of grief? Ever heard about that? Yeah, come on, raise your hands, don't be shy. Right? Yes. So first stage is, of course, denial. No, we do not have a problem here. Second thing is anger. Yeah, we're furious about that. It's just like, so we want to express that anger anyway, but we already feel like there's not a lot that we can really do about that. So we're bargaining. So we're just like making trade-offs and we're trying just like to deal with that. Exactly. So third stage of suffering here. Next stage would be the Great Depression. Why the Great Depression? Because we realize that at some point on that bargaining that we do,
it's not working.
It's not working.
We still have a system that, yeah, it's fucked.
Yeah.
Right?
She names it. I will say it as well. It's fucked. Last step, we need to accept a few things. And we would like to now take you on that journey and just like deal just like very, very slowly with that. So usually the 5 stages of grief take a long, long time. So we have just like, okay, 45 minutes left to do that. So let's start with that. So denial.
So
it's first not only a river in Egypt. I needed to say that.
This is going way too south.
I know. It's just like it's my TikTok brain. It's just like totally screwed up. Okay.
So step one is actually that we're going to try to challenge you on the idea of artificial intelligence as a whole. So also large language models, deep neural nets, you name it. And sometimes that might not be your answer. So with that, I want to do sort of a thought experiment, and I came up with a quote. If you move very fast, time goes slow. So sit in your ass and make time fly. And that quote, that's actually written by me last week. I had to do something, so...
Can she please get an applause just because she came up with something? Thank you.
I was clever once. You have to give it to me.
I will mark that in my calendar, just like with a golden Sharpie.
Exactly. So, the mind experiment. Let's assume here's a train, and you guys are watching at a train, and a train that is going with approximately 80% the speed of light. Very fast, right? So now imagine just that someone is in that train with a laser pointer, and we have two mirrors. And he has the laser on the bottom side, he clicks the laser on, the light goes up, goes down, and that's it. And then you guys are there with a stopwatch, and you look at it and say, okay, I measured a certain time. Now what is happening if that train is actually moving instead of sitting slow? Now it's moving very fast, and what you're actually seeing is sort of a line. So the light's not longer traveling in a straight line because it's moving, it's going actually sort of diagonal. That means the distance is becoming greater, and therefore, if it has moved more in that time space, it should have gone slower within. So actually sitting on your ass makes it go faster. Really cool, right, if you think about it? And that's called special relativity, and that's not designed by me, but that's actually from Einstein.
Oh, wow.
And Einstein said, logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. And just think about it, if you place it on the context of AI, we tell it, here's answer A, I trained you, now give me B, right? So how will you get to C and D and E and even further? That's a big problem, right? We now have a system that exactly does what I tell it, but it has no creativity and no imagination to go beyond or combine whatever knowledge we have to give new knowledge.
But we call this intelligence, right? Sorry.
Indeed, the problem, it's called artificial intelligence. But why do we call it artificial intelligence? Optimism. And sort of, indeed, we want to challenge it at what we know, what we feel, and give it sort of understanding and relatability. And if you take a look at how neural networks work with all those layers in between and the neurons that they call it, they give it very familiar names as what we know. And just because they call it neurons, they call it intelligence because that's sort of what the brain does, right?
Right.
So it's smart, no?
Well.
It's only in our decisions that we are important. That's a very nice quote again, so just think about it. We have a choice to do something and we can stay away from it, steer away from it, or do something with it. And if you do, for example, a Turing test with a machine, it only knows at that point what it knows. It cannot say, I have certain knowledge parts and I can put that together. So talking to a machine, eventually you will find out it's a machine anyway. Even with like the large language models that are booming nowadays, just ask 3 hard questions, you get stupid answers and you know, yes, this is a machine. So
I know humans as well where this applies, to be honest.
Yes.
I mean, who can relate? I mean, not about the people in the room.
Not that you are one, but know someone.
I know someone who knows someone who sat next to a person where this applied.
You're all living with smart people.
Yeah. So right now, in the phase of denial, everything is awesome, right? I mean, we have these large language models. We're using ChatGPT all the time. I do that as well. I just don't expect smart answers. I prompt it to generate sample data for me. And then I need to tweak the sample data because it's always Peter being the manager and Anna being the assistant. Always. Then I need to tweak that. So who believes that everything is awesome? We would love to play the video. With the sound.
Everything is awesome. Oh my gosh, I love
You're allowed to dance now. Okay, thank you. Where are the Lego fans? You're my people. Okay. talking about the next stage of grief, which would be anger.
You're already upset with everything we've told you? Your AI sucks. Period.
We should have put that on the slide, right?
Yeah. All glory comes from daring to begin. Also a very famous quote. But just think about it. As an AI, you're just doing something, and it's spitting data out, it's spitting images, it's spitting bad jokes, and it's telling you where is someone located, provide its location. Well, think about just stepping out of line, doing something different. And that's exactly what one person tried to do. Anyone? Rosa Parks. What's she famous for? Saying no.
Yeah.
And you can do it perfectly. What did she say?
Nah.
Nah.
Very snarky.
She lived in America quite a while ago, and black people had their own section in the bus, and they should shit there. And the white people in front, they had their own places, and at one point the bus was full, and a person walked up to her and said, "That's my place now." And she stood up and said no.
Exactly.
Exactly. And that's also her moment. I knew someone had to take the first step, and I made up my mind not to move. Now imagine your AI doing that. Do something cool for me, not today.
I'm familiar with that one.
I actually had it with my phone. I was driving, and I have like Apple CarPlay on my phone, and I said, "Call my mother," and it said, "Not today." Instead of just saying, "I have
Maybe
no
it is smart,
connection."
so I don't know your mom. Okay.
But yeah, was she wrong at that point? We can just say, well, living at that period, in that time, in that place, white people were privileged, black people were like nothing for society, so she had no right to say no. But still she did, and revolutionized at first public transport and afterwards human rights, etc. But now imagine just AI doing whatever they want. I have a robot, and I say, "Okay, you're now my pizza delivery robot," and then it suddenly thinks, "No, I'm your gardener." Something like that, right? I don't think we would be happy with that. But with people, it's different because we have these emotions and we feel things, we experience
And no, you
things.
do not get the pizza, you only get the salad, you know. Making healthy decisions from me.
You have to start with tomato.
Well,
Again, bias and prejudice, the attitudes to keep in hand, no attitudes to be avoided. And the other one, I don't believe it's humanly possible to be free of bias. A lot of people talked about it, and these two very nice. Former president of the United States talking to Native Americans, but also on the other hand, an author being in contact with African American people. And they realized whatever that we have in our minds, we cannot just turn off. We always have those biases. And whether you want it or not, you probably all have some at one point about anything you hear, you see, even about us probably.
yes, I'm biased as well.
Me too.
And you all are biased as hell as well. So we all are. We all. And even if we think, I'm so open-minded, I'm just like very conscious, I'm just like super inclusive, talk about this all the time, just like, which bias do you have? We will not reveal this on stage, right? But it is a very, very nice conversation starter. So if you ever feel just like this uncomfortable, awkward silence between two or more people, just like, hey, ask people about their biases. That's really an icebreaker, I promise.
Not being part of a group doesn't mean you can't ally them. And I put this up for the slide because there was at one point Bright magazine, they did some interviews, and they mentioned that, well, men can't be feminist because feminism is being a lived experience. You have to experience it before you can understand it. And they said, well, men can't really support women because they have no idea how it is to be one. But the question is that fair to say? No, right? But still, there are people that actually believe that.
Unfortunately, yes. And of course, the same goes with ableism, racism, colonialism, just like all the isms that we want to get rid of. And of course, we all can be a good ally. And that means, talking about AI and large language models, that it is really a very, very bad idea to just like trust everything these machines just output. It is us, and I know that I'm just like already just like taking something from just like the next slides. Here you have the responsibility to fact check that and just like to look like a little bit inside and say, is that really the thing that I'm believing in? We have another Lego movie for you. We're very afraid, so we're the Batman fans. Come on. Video, please.
Wham! Kazap. First try.
C minor, put it in C minor.
Okay. It's about the first try.
Think just about the AI race that we're in, right? Everyone is launching their new AI stuff. Microsoft came with OpenAI together, and they were like, cool, let's do this, and we publish it. And then Google came with their BART system, and it had one wrong fact, and then they totally killed it. But again, the problem is they have something, and they want to be as fast as possible. So they sort of have this intention that, okay, we want to be the first one. And what's the problem with that? Well, we as humans were like, well, it's the first try, what does it matter, right? But this can have some implications on the long run, because whatever is coming out now is going back in later on.
Yeah, so the output that is generated by large language models today will at some point be used to train the next generation of large language models. And this then perpetuates narratives that we really do not want to have in our world anymore. Which means even if this counter argument of, yeah, I can't train the same language model with just like data it outputs, that's true, can't. But I can train a different model with that. And that means we're just like in a downward spiral. It is deteriorating, we're not improving anymore, we're making it worse.
You literally end up with AI talking to AI trained on AI. It's a nice circle, right?
It's like, I mean, have you ever experienced a chatbot experience when you want to just like rebook a flight or order a pizza or, I don't know, ever wanted to have a chatbot talk to the other chatbot? and do we really expect that something good is happening there? Okay, let's talk about some facts, shall we? Who knows that one? It's Trump's inauguration.
No Trump fans?
No Trump fans?
Trump haters, maybe?
I'm surprised. So what is reality? Is this reality? It's just a fantasy. It is the very same day. It is the very same time. It's just a different angle. Because even a photo is opinionated, wants to tell a story, has literally a perspective. And that perspective, of course, is carrying beliefs and a mental model and wants to convey a message. So you can't really say there is just like some super objective reality, because this is just like two sides of the very same story. And if I would like to convey the message that Trump's inauguration was just like a huge success and just like so many people were there and cheering and that was full. And you can just like see the first rows and it's just like taken from a very low angle and it appears to be just like super stuffed. Then I can do that. And if I wanted to convey the message that this was not really a huge success and that there were not really a lot of supporters, then I can do this with this picture. And both portray what really had happened. And it's just the angle that now decides what you want to believe in. And now let's not take that to photographers, videographers, but just like let a machine decide, a machine that we feed with data that is so super biased that it even tells you, well, if you're poor, then it's likely that you're black. And then we portray a reality where we can't even decide anymore what is happening here.
So next up, of course, now going to bargaining. So we're now angry.
Third stage.
Third stage.
Anyone angry here already? Did we upset you? Yeah, thank you.
Bargaining. It's time to actually start reasoning about this whole AI concept.
Do you know what that is? Yes.
Anyone knows how transistor works?
Kinda.
A few people?
A few people, so the older ones among us still remember, right?
So basically, what you're looking at is indeed transistors, and your entire computer consists only of transistors. Doesn't matter what you're taking, your chips, your RAM, your CPU, your GPU, it's all transistors, whether it's those big ones or tiny ones, but transistors. And transistors typically only do one thing, and that's either turn on or off. And yes, they could do more for the people that actually know how they work, but it's sort of a switch that goes from 0 to 1. So just now imagine that you're asking life-changing questions, and you want a decision, and you're just telling that thing, decide my life, right? It can only tell you 0 or 1. And then we can combine a few, and you get a sort of, I think this might be the correct answer, because that's what AI is doing, right? You get probabilities. It's just a statistical model. It's telling you, well, you want to fuck up your life. There's a 70% chance that might work. 30% chance I would do something else. And you're asking that to a transistor with no feelings, no brain, no emotions, nothing.
Yeah.
So if everyone is thinking alike, then no one is thinking, right? You can ask that a question. Going to that transistor, they all do zeros and one. So is there a difference between them? Not really from what they're doing. But we humans, we experience things in a different way. We kind of react to different things. So for example, if you walk on the street and you see a bird, some person will think, oh, let's snap its neck. And the other person is, oh, cool birdie, right? Only I am sadistic.
You said that on stage. Exactly. So, of course, we are all just like super unique, very, very human snowflakes, all of us. And it's good that way, trust me. But a machine can't reflect that. But the conversational style of those LLMs, large language models, just like makes it appear as if I was really have a conversation with someone. And you know that this is not a new thing. We refer to Siri as her. Say, I asked Siri and she replied. Maybe you don't do that because my Siri has a male voice. But we still assign it a gender. And of course, the default is a female voice. Because of what exactly? Because of the reflected sexism in our world that assistant needs to be a woman, right? And in case you never thought about it, it is a very, very good day to start thinking about that.
It's all about giving them personality, right? That is what's selling it. Someone drives a Mercedes, perhaps. You can have a voice assist in there, and then you ask, what do you think of Audi? And then it will respond with, I think the same as you, because you're driving a Mercedes. Ooh. That's sort of the level of AI and personality that we wanted to give.
Lovely.
So how do we actually learn and experience something and
as humans.
Have memories? As humans.
As humans.
That's very important. In our brain, we have so-called neurons, and we can create synapses between them, and we get connections. And what you see on the top one is actually if you learn something new on day one, some neurons get activated, and they grow, and they get stable over time. And at day 5, you get way more interaction just from that one single experience. And there's a whole area in your brain that is starting to work together, looking for, okay, what is the best response to memorize something, just to learn something. And your brain is really looking to find connections between all the elements in whatever possible way it can do. And then you can go to day 10. And then you see a really strong formation. And this is, for example, someone getting a birthday present. So how did they respond on that? One part of the brain grew, and that kept on growing, and then there's sort of a backup part. But that is how we learn. There's no real structure in it. This person learned something in the right upper corner, but some people learned in the right bottom, in the left top, in the middle, you name it. But every neuron works together, and that interaction, that is what makes a specific memory. So let's say I have a different memory. Okay, I experience something, I burn my finger in a pan, I'm cooking rice, for example. I burn my finger, I said, shit, it's hot in here. and then some part of that brain gets triggered, and electrons fire all through my brain, and that's how I learn. I can create new paths and think outside of the box. And that's something neural networks can't. We design them, we train them, we build them, but we don't tell to them, this is your model, now build yourself a new model and a new model and a new model and a new model, and do whatever you want, and I'll trust you.
But why do we then call them neural?
And that is what we have prepared as well.
As
So you
if
can
I
see
knew
again
that,
all those
right?
neurons.
As if I was prepared as well. I had a smart moment today as well. Thank you.
That was your moment, right?
That was my moment.
Why do we call it neural networks? Is basically what you can see here already. In our brains, we had all those neurons just doing something together, and we get outputs in our brain. But in a neural network, we just have all those layers, and we resemble them as circles, while in fact it's just like a calculation going from point A to point B. There is no real sphere or whatever. But we just draw it like that, and because it sort of resembles the neurons in our head, we just call it artificial intelligence neural networks, because it resembles our brain, so it must be intelligent.
Yeah, so it looks like it, but it doesn't operate like that. Which means that just because we lack of understanding how things work, we assume that artificial intelligence would actually be smart. I mean, I can't even. This is bad. So what do we do about that?
A picture of large language models and how they actually work. And we can zoom in a little bit to make it a bit more clear. And there is some stuff going on, and it's pretty common. But on the left bottom, we have a section called input, and we do some encoding. And basically what we say is we have whatever you asked it, and it will reduce it into something smaller that it can work with, so it can understand what is it that you're asking. And then it will give it sort of a value, give it a weight, so it knows, okay, you said the, so probably these words can come next. So it already sort of starts to get your context. And that will feed into that other system. And then it will do some encoding as well. And then you get an output. That's at the top right. And that output is also fed into the next one. And probably we all use ChatGPT, or at least tried out what it is. And you see like it's typing and then it's prompting. And you think, is it actually typing? Yes, it's actually typing. Why? Because that output is going to the next one. So it's actually a circle. I'm generating the as my starting word. Okay, what is coming next? This seems like an 80% shot that you want that word. I just put it out.
Which means it is just calculating the likelihood or the probability that the next syllable is going to be one of the correct ones. And of course, we can just like have something just like the temperature parameter, or we can just like say, yeah, I want my output to be just like a little bit more creative, which means just like less facts, more entertainment. We know TV stations for that, right? Or we can just like set this to a value, or just like, well, it doesn't need to be that entertaining, but I would prefer it to be just like at least about factually correct. And the about is very, very important in that sentence, because we don't know. We have no clue, and there is no way to just like validate that this is actually true, what this machine is outputting. Which means, who needs to do this now? Who is it? It is you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. It is all of you, and us, of course, as well, who need to do that. So we really have the fake data and difference in opinions and all of that. So I will not read the entire slide to you. Please do this on your own. But that is what we have. Now, what do we get for that? Biased content, wrong logic,
Fake data,
and everything is blurry, fuzzy, skewed, inaccurate, assumptions. I mean, that is pretty much human, right? It is like when you talk to someone who pretends to be an expert but isn't. But with a human, I would just like more easily spot that. Or I would just like at least take into consideration that what they tell me is not factually correct. It could be that this person is just an idiot. I mean, I once sat next to a person who knew an idiot. But for a machine, we assume that this is factually correct. Now we do have a problem, because what I have, or what I assume what I will get and what I actually get, this is miles apart. So I'm not doing myself a favor here.
We do not feed data into those systems, actually, but we feed stories, if you think about it. It's how we experience something, how we rationalize something, and it's our side of the story, right? There's always two sides to something. And if I put something on the internet or in a data set...
Then it needs to be true.
It needs to be true. It's on Facebook.
Well, it's in the internet, right?
But just think about it, right? If we're putting it there, it's how we think it is, from our biases, from our beliefs, from our standpoint, from our religion, maybe. We feed it with whatever we think is right.
And now what comes into play? The louder my voice is, and the more impact my voice has in the society I live in, the more I perpetuate my own beliefs. So the privilege that I benefit from takes just like a major role in that equation. Which means that if I belong to a minority or several minorities, then my story does not really count anymore, because it is not as reflected in the data that we gain. It is not fed with these stories into the models, and it is overlooked afterwards. Which means that if you are in a developed country, male, white, middle-aged, well-educated, I mean, good for you. What if you share a belief, though, that is not the belief of the majority? What, though, if you have the wrong gender? What, though, if you have the wrong skin color? What, though, if you do not live in a developed country? Then you're fucked again. Which means that we're again in a deteriorating system. We're not making it better. I saw a very, very nice tweet, and I will actually read this to you. So it's by Carl Sharrow, and he says, "Humans doing the hard jobs on minimum wage, while the robots write poetry and paint, is not the future I wanted." But that is now the world that we live in. We ask machines to do the poetry and to paint the art and just like to do all the amazing things. And we're just like so mind blown. Wow, this machine did that. Can you even imagine? And then, of course, we do not credit real artists anymore. And they are starving. And they do not get credited at all anymore. And of course, this art in air quotes that Dall-E and others are outputting, that is, let's say, inspired by real artists. Maybe it's even just like they stole it. But as artists are usually not at the top of the food chain, they have no saying in that anymore. And to make that a little bit more relatable to you, as we're at the developer conference, if you're a developer, your content is also code. I mean, what is happening with tools like GitHub Copilot? What is the discussion about intellectual property? Which repositories were scanned? Only the ones with an MIT or GNU or whatever open source license? The hell no. They decided to not filter that, which means that even if you had code that you did not want to be open source for some reason. There are a lot of good reasons to do that, so even if I am a firm believer in open source, not everything should be open sourced. Then it could be that, of course, your code is like used as inspiration for all the good suggestions that I now get when I say, hey, please, GitHub Copilot, help me with that, because I'm way too lazy to generate all of that code on my own. I would just steal yours, just that I have a middleware now in place that steals from you on my behalf. And everything is nice because GitHub is cool, right?
Yep.
So it is not just like one bad player here. It is just like an entire system where we believe that AI is solving problems while totally ignoring how many problems this still generates and is continuing to generate. Let's talk about some biases. So we stole this this chart from somewhere on the internet, and we'll provide the source, of course, as well, because we were not redrawing this. So it is just like highlighting a few biases that we could have. First bias that nearly everyone has is confirmation bias, and it's also just like the most known bias. So if you're not familiar with that, if you already know something or believe in something or seem to know something, and you Google or you Bing or you use whatever you like or you talk with people, even that, people, then it turns out that you will use some mechanisms and some techniques that will confirm your initial thoughts. You will not challenge yourself and just like, hey, could it be wrong that I believe A? You will search for proof for, hey, I believe in A. This is correct, right? Oh, second, sorry.
I actually went for the ostrich one.
Oh, yes.
Very nice one.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, we probably all had this, that we needed to do a demo or something like that. And we're like, I can't finish this, it's not working, but I still have to present it. And then you just fake an illness or something just to avoid it, right? Just call your boss and say, well, it takes way more time than estimated. And you're not telling it, I was spending my evening World of Warcraft or doing whatever. But that's sort of like your avoidance effect, right? If I stick my head in the sand, it's not there. And that's why they actually call it the ostrich.
Yeah. Last one that we want to highlight, because we will not walk you through all of these, is the status quo bias. Who of you ever said or heard, never change a running system? All hands need to go up. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which means we believe that we should maintain the status quo. Problem with that is remaining with the status quo is just like a killer of change, a killer of improvement. So we think that, okay, so we can't just like totally screw up if we do not change anything. And then we're just like freezing and standing still to just like avoid that and just like we remain with the status quo. But of course, this is not always a good idea. But these are just like some of the biases we all have, and you're totally invited to just like explore your own and discuss these with just like people that you trust. Don't ask ChatGPT.
Do the bias bingo, it's more fun.
Do a bias bingo. So we will do this next year at this conference. So if you would like to do a bias bingo with us, put the green card, right? Okay.
Figure out how to make ChatGPT play bias bingo?
You got it. Okay, let's talk about the last stage, depression.
And of course, with all those biases, you cannot avoid being...
It says, oh crap.
Yeah, it literally says, oh crap.
But just like in a nerdy way.
You have all these biases, so you have one, at least. Probably
everyone
like
has at least one, I promise you.
You have probably way more than one. Most people have.
So most people have just like 10 to 15. So this is at least what studies show, that you have just like on average 10 to 15, but some have more, some have less. So. But we're not blaming you, because it is natural to have that, because they come from your own experience, and your own experience usually is a privileged experience.
This was us this morning. We didn't have coffee, by the way.
Yeah, so this is actual footage of us being totally under-caffeinated. What did we want to say about that?
You need a coffee. I can get you one.
No, it's fine right now.
It's fine right now. Otherwise, we won't sleep tonight.
No, it's like, okay, we know we have these biases, so it's sort of, let's pray to the overlords that everything will work out in the end.
Yeah.
And this is a picture of us as an overlord without caffeine.
Yeah. So I mean, we stated now, yeah, we do have a problem, and no, not everything is awesome, right? So we're all biased. This is totally screwed. We have the wrong data. We output just like wrong stuff. This is a deteriorating system, so we're screwed. Shall we now just obey to the overlords? Is that the solution? Shall I stop challenging my bias? Because if I have anyway a lot of bias, okay, so I can maybe get rid of 1 or 2, and if I go to therapy, maybe even 3, but if I have 15 on average, what's the point in that?
This one is actually from her, so she also came up with a good idea.
Sometimes. So I have my moments, right?
The eyes will only see what the mind is prepared to comprehend. And the funny thing is, after we wrote this down, this guy, and most people probably don't know exactly what he did, but when Einstein wrote his relativity theories, the special ones and the general ones, and created all the postulates to support his statement and his experiments, he said, well, there's a problem and it doesn't work. And he was right, but Einstein's reaction was, I'm out of here. He didn't respond. He never reacted to it because he knew he was right. At least that guy was right. Einstein
So that he was wrong.
And 50 years later, they corrected it, and then turned out that guy was right, and it wasn't even a physicist, but he was right. But yeah, we can only...
You know that awkward feeling when a junior is just like correcting you? That. Yes.
Exactly that.
Yeah, so and this famous quote just like really states that if you are not ready to just like see a different part of the world and a different part of the reality, because again, our angle is just like super limited. So we can just like lurk through just like a door that is almost closed if we want to perceive reality. That is our angle. We can just like lurk through the keyhole. And if your mind is not prepared to just like see more, you will not be able to open the door. Never ever. And that also reflects in AI then, because you will only ask questions that will again perpetuate your beliefs and your narratives.
So now the question is, what is your bias? We've seen a lot of them and we talked about them, but we have them and we should accept them. And it's all about knowing your bias, because if you know what your bias is, you can actually work with it, you can understand it, and you sort of know why you make certain decisions. So if you feel uncomfortable for some reason in a certain situation, it might be because you have a certain bias against a certain situation. And understanding it might help you move along, develop yourself, actually experience it in a different way and get better.
Yeah. Who believes that for most problems, there's only one way to solve it? Yeah, my way or the highway, good one. Thank you for pointing this out. Big applause. So usually, most developers are just like also in consulting roles, so it depends, right? So if it's not 42, it depends, which means that, of course, there's not only one way to solve something, but there's just like several other ways, and you do not even need to explore all of these several other ways, but just like acknowledge that there is at least one other way.
It's all about being in that vague gray area in between.
Yep. So, for now, welcome to acceptance. We would like you to just like put up your tray, fasten your seatbelts, because we will experience some more turbulences here on the way on the last stage. So, acceptance. Shall we just like accept that AI will not go away? Shall we accept that large language models can be helpful, but that we will experience a shift in responsibility? That previously it was me generating content, I was sent this somehow to a manager, and this manager would then just like validate this and approve this. Now I have ChatGPT from me who would generate the content, and it's up to me to validate, to confirm, and to fact check, and also to really have a decent look at it and say, okay, is this the level of bias that I feel still comfortable with? Or do I want to tweak this? And this comes down to what I call the two operation systems when it comes to generating content. So I believe that writing and editing are just like super different. Who agrees? Writing and editing. Let me rephrase. We're at the developer conference. Writing code and debugging. See, this is when you need to be relatable, you know. It's just like it's that thing. So, okay, why is that? So for debugging, you need to be Sherlock Holmes, and you are the murderer in one person.
You assume one person?
Yes, I know. So, which means so when I'm writing content, and it does not matter if I'm writing code or if I'm creating art and painting something, or if I'm writing just like, I don't know, a marketing proposal or anything for that matter. It does not matter at all. If I'm generating content, I'm just like super in the flow of my work, and I will be very creative, and I will have just like peace in mind, just like writing. And there are people who find that easy. And then there are people, if they are confronted with this blinking cursor on a white canvas, that blinking cursor yells at them, you loser. You don't get anything done. And if you feel like that, and it's easier for you to already have a starting point, some kind of template that you can then just like tweak. And by tweak, I mean, you will literally rewrite everything that was there, but just like step by step, so that you do not have that fear of the blinking cursor on the white canvas. Or if you work in dark mode, just like vice versa. Yeah, we're nerds. It's fine. I'm getting there. So then this is a good starting point. If you are just like more the editing person, and you feel just like super comfortable, just like editing stuff that is already there, you can use stuff like ChatGPT or Dall-E or whatever. Doesn't matter, so ChatGPT is more a placeholder for famous LLMs. Then this is just like a good idea to take it for what it is. It is a helper. It is not replacing your work. And you now have the responsibility to deal with that. Yeah, we needed to sneak that in. So the big responsibility, because the facts, the bias, the tonality, the personality of the data, that is now on your shoulders. And of course, it is super tempting, very, very tempting to just say, I ran out of time and I have so many emails and so many meetings.
Just press OK, submit,
done.
done.
Just press OK. It will be OK, right? I mean, how bad can it be? And I hope that you got the message that we showed you. Yes, it is really bad. So this is evil. And we can't just press OK to those first drafts. We can't do this.
So here you can see the GitHub secret scanning. Very nice feature. It detects whatever you put in there and maybe sees if you have a personal access token or password in there.
Anyone ever leaked an API key? Come on, we all did.
At some point, every developer will. But this will really help you quickly find out if you are actually putting something very top secret, FBI level in there, ready to be published for everyone. But simply the fact that there is like a button which says security scanning, is it secure enough? Should you really only trust that and not rely on common sense? Right? It would be good practice to just don't put in personal access tokens, API keys, whatever.
Thing is, common sense is way less common than you might think. In my experience, very personal.
I'm the living proof.
I will not comment on that.
Just a quick idea on this one as well. We always talk about data and we take a look at it. And AI
Who's
can
good
do
at
a lot
math?
with it. And there are some math people. But basically, if you take a look at how data is built up and you say, OK, let's take an average person, what will it weigh? And then you put it on an axis, and then you get something like that. And when the peak is in the middle and like both sides are equal, that's called normal deviated. And you can have something that's more biased to the left or to the right. and then to the right is left, and to the left is right skewed. A bit confusing. Mathematicians were always completely different than other people's.
The math ain't mathing for me.
Like with the clock is negative and counter clock is positive. Nah, no idea why. Right-hand rule, etc.
Yes.
Really confusing. But again, it's all about how is your data distributed. And AI has no idea about that. It just says, okay, I know some data, I train on it, and probably I did a good job because you asked me another question. That's all it does. So the question is everything in life normally distributed? Not really. And you can go into, shall we divide it equally? Or do we by equity? Or do we sort of a liberation style and do nothing at all? And some things might work, like with equality. Okay, we all have the same stuff and we have like a flat line in our data and it's working sort of for everything, but it's not like justice for everyone, right? So if you go to equity, I put some weights on some different stuff and now it's working, but that's actually sort of a bias, but now the bias for them is working and that's a good thing. So some situations might actually need some bias from your side to actually make it work. So it's not that bias is a bad thing, you just need to dose it and be very precise with it. And for liberation as well, sometimes you don't need to do anything at all. Don't prevent it, just let it happen. But it all depends on your situation.
So how would we rebalance our data? I mean, if data is just like so biased, so skewed, so evil, so incomplete, so inaccurate, how would we do that?
That's indeed a question. And the problem is, or at least a problem, there are a lot of things going from designing for the norm to designing for everyone to designing for the pluriverse. And designing for everyone is sort of the answer we had for years. Okay, let's just do very inclusive and everything and everyone felt included. But how would you do that, right? It's very hard.
Yeah, it is.
And then the pluriverse, I think that's something that's really close to you.
Not more than to anyone else. I just feel that it is the unknown unknowns. Are you familiar with that term? So we have the known knowns. It's just like it is things that I know and I know the answer of. And then I have the known unknowns, which means I know that I don't know something. I don't know what you had for lunch yesterday. Sorry. I don't know that, but it is known that I don't know that. Then we have the unknown knowns. I'm not even aware that I know something. And then we have the unknown unknowns. I'm not aware that I'm lacking a piece of the puzzle. And that is the worst. So what do we do about that? We need to talk with other people. I know. This can be scary, who would then just like make me aware of their puzzle piece so that I paint just like a more coherent and more complete picture. And that is the pluriverse.
And then it's on to the final chapter, the end. You survived it already way too long with us, so we're going to wrap it up. Just a nice sort of outro. There was a company that asked its employees, just take a sign, take a picture with whatever stereotype you had or whatever bias you had. And there's like, okay, I'm a same-sex marriage man, so someone must be the man in the relationship and someone must be the wife. Very stereotypical, but we all face that in sort of same-sex
I have a lot of
situations.
tattoos and so do you, so
Yeah,
we
we're
both
criminals.
need to be criminals, right? Obviously.
And this is one for yourself. Do a cost analysis, consolidate it, and just tell me that it's worth the investment. And then that same guy is, why did I ever go to college? Well, somebody said to you, it's a good investment. It's all about how do you mutate, transform, and eventually present that data.
Exactly.
Whether or not it's correct.
So, which means?
Everything that we do is being amplified by AI. Everything that we think, everything that we do, every bias that we have, everything that we write, everything that we transform.
Is
everything.
reflected, yes. So, we're on a path.
We only just started the AI journey.
We need to make sure that we have better data, which can only happen with diversity. It does not happen overnight. So every one of you is asked to just like represent more diversity in everything. We have one more last slide. No, just kidding, because of course, so this is the last one. So if you want to get the slides, we set up a little GitHub repository, and with that, thank you.
Thank you very much.